Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another fabulous edition of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce Chamber Chat. My name is Brad Kloffenstein. I'm president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber, and I'm your host coming to you live today from the fabulous Lawton Loop in the heart of Lawrence at the old Fort Benjamin Harrison. Today, we have a wonderful guest, good friend of mine, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz joins us. He is the author and publisher of IndiePolitics.org, and he is a political vagabond with almost 20 years experience now in central Indiana. So Abdul, welcome to Lawrence. Let's start off with, what's your favorite thing about Lawrence?
The people.
People? Just because we're not downtown?
Well, no, actually, I like like I said, the people of Lawrence. I like the business climate, and also the fact that Lawrence has managed to go from what's the lack of a better term, a town where there's always something going on in Larryville and most of it's still unsolved, to making progress and getting things done. Let's put it that way.
So we're no North Haberbrook, but
but by God, it put them on the map.
So let's get started here. We are 6 weeks out from, I'm not going to say the election, the conclusion of the election, because it has started. So what are your tea leaves telling you? And let's talk a little bit about the poll that you put out about a week ago that has a tight governor's race.
Yes, we partnered with an organization called Change Research. They polled for us back in April. And it was a poll survey done online, so kind of keep that in mind with the results. But it was interesting because back in April, Donald Trump was like 52-39 over Joe Biden, who was the nominee at the time. Because actually, the main reason I polled back then was to see if Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden were still going to be kind of tied neck and neck, but the race was going to go until May or June. But it didn't, so we just had to kind of focus on other things. In the governor's race, Eric Holcomb was 20 points ahead of Woody Myers, 45-25. Fast forward May, June, July, August, September, 5 months, and according to our polling, it's a much more competitive race. Eric Holcomb was 36 points, Dr. Woody Myers was 30 points, and Donald Rainwater, Libertarian in the group, was 24 points. Now, when we first got that, me and my pollster were like, did we do this right? Because what's going on here? And they went back and they double checked the math and the responses, just look for any sort of, weird error. And that's where it was. Now, I remind people, a poll is not a prediction by any stretch of the imagination, it's just merely a snapshot in time. So from that perspective, on that day, on September 3rd through September 7th, when we did our polling, that's how people felt. Now, whether they still feel that way, almost at the end of the month, remains to be seen. But apparently, there were a lot of people who were upset about the mask mandate, about businesses being closed. A lot of people in southern and northern Indiana is where a lot of that was as well. And so the issue is it a protest vote, or are they actually supporting Rainwater, or is it more of a, hey, I don't like the governor today, but I'm not going to vote for the Democrat, so I'll take the Libertarian. One thing we didn't do, which I wish we did do, was we did a lot of the favorable, unfavorable ratings, but we didn't do the Libertarian at the time. And so that would have been some good information, good data to have to compare it to how many people knew Don Rainwater versus how many people didn't know him versus how many people were supporting him simply because he wasn't Eric Holcomb. They weren't going to support the Democrat. So it was interesting, like I said, to look at that. Like I said, Eric lost, do my math here, because I studied law, not math in school, so please forgive me. Eric lost 9 points, and Rainwater gained almost like 16 points. And so it was interesting to see where those 9 went. We figured they all went to Rainwater, but also our undecideds back in April were like 22, and now they're only 11. So it's interesting to see that dynamic take place. Now, I did ask Don Rainwater last week, have you guys raised any money off of this? Have you, picked up your fundraising, that sort of thing? And they haven't yet. They only raised about $4,000 and some change. But that was when I saw him last week. So that's going to be an interesting race to watch. I still think the tides favor the governor. We'll have some more information about whether he's going to lift the mask mandate either today or perhaps next week. But I see the libertarians maybe picking up like maybe 5 to 7, maybe as much as 10% of the race. But I still see Eric Holcomb winning the race. Maybe not as much as he did before, perhaps even under 50%. But I still see Eric Holcomb winning. But that's today. Ask me tomorrow, I'd give you an entirely different answer.
Well, so some of the crosstabs indicated that Rainwater was picking up Trump supporters, largely because Rainwater is somewhat of an anti-masker, whereas Holcomb seemed to be picking up Biden supporters because Biden obviously is a national mask mandate, and Holcomb to this point has been masks virtually all the time. If Holcomb reverses that, how does that reverse the flow, in your opinion?
It'll be interesting because you're right. A lot of people who said they were supporting Rainwater also supported Donald Trump. About 18% of the Biden people said they were also going to vote for Eric Holcomb. I'm not sure if the mask mandate is mostly responsible for that, at least the Biden people supporting Eric Holcomb, because Holcomb has actually done a really good job sort of being bipartisan and reaching out to Democrats and that sort of thing. So I think if he lifts the mask mandate, he's got to have a really good, logical, rational reason for it, reason to do that. Because one thing the governor has always said is he always looks at the data. Because I asked him back in April, hey, 45-25, what do you think? He's like, well, not interested in polling, interested in data and the whole 9 yards. So it'll be interesting to see what he does come either this afternoon or, for that matter, next week, with the mask mandate, with the orders. Now, he did tell us last week, kind of read between the lines, that Indiana was trending in the right direction. Everything was going down. So that may give us some hint as to what he's going to say this afternoon.
So local bar owners in Indianapolis, several of them downtown, filed a lawsuit to get an injunction saying that they're not being treated fairly under the law, and that they are that Marion County doesn't have the authority to impose restrictions on bars and restaurants, that they're overseen by the state. Where do you see that going?
And I'll do fairness, I haven't read the full lawsuit all the way through yet. That's kind of my pet projects this weekend when I'm on the road. But I don't necessarily see them being successful, primarily because the Marion County Health Department does actually have the authority to regulate bars and restaurants because they're the health department, because of the nature of what they do. And throw in an alcohol license, that's a little bit of a different creature than just a regular place that just serves food but doesn't serve alcohol. So I don't necessarily see them win. It kind of goes back to the old smoking ban lawsuits from a few years ago, that the only big winner in that one was the OTB that kind of got away from, because the OTB was clearly spelled out in statute that the OTB is regulated by the alcohol and gaming tobacco industry. So, I mean, I'll give them credit. I mean, I kind of, the small L libertarian in me kind of supports them on that decision, but I don't think they'll necessarily be successful. Now, once I read through the whole lawsuit, I'll have a much better idea, but just off the top of my head right now, good luck, guys. Godspeed, Mr. President, and give them hell.
All right. Well, something else I wanted to ask you, and Lawrence is squarely in the middle of this. About a week ago, State Senator Jim Merritt announced that he is going to step down after this year's election, which is going to create a vacancy for the District 31 seat here that covers Lawrence and about half of Fishers. I'm aware of at least 3 names that have stepped up and who've said that they're in. What is your read on why Merritt would decide to step down, and who do you see filling that seat?
Well, I spoke to Jim Merritt that Friday before he made the official announcement that he was stepping down, because he wanted to let me know, just out of our friendship and knowing each other, hey, I don't want to catch you off guard by my decision to step down. I would say the main reason he wants to step down is, A, think about, you just want to do something else. and 20-something years as caucus chairman, there's really only so much that you can do, and he wanted to play a bigger role in Indiana. So whether that means running for governor in 2024 remains to be seen because of the mayor's race and all that. That all turned out. I do. Oh, and also Jim Merritt is doing a lot of work with food insecurity, because he's doing a lot of work with Gleaners, with Kroger, and a lot of those folks. And also when he did Indiana's Lifeline Law. So he's in a lot of sort of that public health, public good space. As far as a replacement goes, I have 4 people on my short list. I have former City County Councilmember Mike McQuillan, who announced, Kyle Walker, who announced, Fisher's Town Council President Cecilia Coble, she officially announced today, and another young lady named Tiffany Diltris, or Diltvoss. I can never get her last name right. She's a real estate agent up in Fishers. She's announced that she's running. So right now, that's 4. I also heard Amy Masalami, who's on the Hamilton County Council, may decide to run, and then there's always the TBA person, to be known and announced at a little bit of a later date. So right now, that's 4 definite people running, potentially 5, potentially 6. As far as who's ahead right now, that kind of remains to be seen, because most of the district is in Marion County, like what, Brad, like what, 60%?
It is
committee people.
It is 55 or 60%. So I think that there's roughly 100 precinct committeemen, maybe just under that. And I think that like 55, 57 of those are in Marion County. And obviously it's determined by how many people show up at the caucus will be a big determining factor. But yeah, Lawrence could determine it if all their precinct committeemen stick together. Yeah.
And see, what's interesting is you had Mike McClellan, who was city councilman in that district. You also had Kyle Walker, who was county chairman for a while, was both big involved in the party. Cecilia Coble, who's also been heavily active up in Hamilton County, and Tiffany D has also been active as well. So it'll be interesting to see once we get through the 40-day show, once this all starts, to pick up and go from there.
So, all right. Well, that's interesting. Let's use this as an opportunity for those who have joined us to ask you any questions. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I don't want to dominate your time since we only have you for half an hour. Any questions from our audience? I have. Oh, there's Russ who needs to. There we go. Russ, you have a question?
I just need to unmute there. So. This paints an interesting picture of the Supreme Court situation. It looks like it's going to play out now, because it doesn't seem like there are going to be 4 Republicans that are going to refuse to make that happen. Is that the latest update? And who do you see getting the nod?
The person supposed to make the announcement on Saturday. It's a choice between what's her face from Notre Dame and what's her face from Florida are the 2 names that have been mentioned the most. The Florida justice has less experience, but she's Cuban American. That can kind of play into the whole Florida debate. It's interesting as I watch this, because I thought it was funny that 4 years ago, when Barack Obama had a vacancy, Republicans were like, no, we need to wait until the election. That's like 9 months in, when Justice Scalia passed away. And then fast forward to today, my Republican friends like, well, because we got a Senate of the President, same party, we should go forward, and the people don't have to vote. I'm like, whoa, okay. Now, granted, Republicans do have the authority to do it because all the Constitution says advise and consent and vote. But what I caution people is to be very careful on whose toes you step on today, because they're going to be connected to the butt you got to kiss tomorrow. And I can see a situation like this popping up with Democrats and Republicans kind of yelling and screaming about, the Supreme Court nominees and judicial picks and the whole 9 yards. But karma's a bitch sometimes. And so when you do this stuff, it comes back to bite you in the rear end. So like I said, be careful whose toes you step on today, because part of my friends will be connected to the ass you got to kiss tomorrow.
So I've got a question for you. I know that when you polled in the Attorney General's race, you've got two fairly well-known candidates, Weinzapfel from Evansville, who was a state rep and then mayor of Evansville, and then Todd Rokita, who was a congressman and also served as Indiana Secretary of State. There's 18% of your respondents who said that they were undecided in that race. What does that tell you?
Not a lot of people like Todd Rokita, but they don't necessarily want to vote for a Democrat. Oops, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Oops, my bad. I think some of it is Rokita's been out of office for a while. So a lot of people may not necessarily know who he is. And Weinzapfel obviously would not have as much name ID as a Todd Rokita would. What I do think is interesting is how many Republicans, and to go back and check my crosstabs, would vote for Jonathan Weinzapfel simply because they don't like Todd Rokita. How many Curtis Hill people, would switch over and vote Democratic. I do think, however, that the 51, 35, 36, I think that the number was, is pretty indicative of what Indiana kind of looks like. So, and if you take it out, 2/3 of undecideds in the break for the challengers, that gets Weinzapfel like 46, 47, Rokita like a 52, 53, which would be basically normal for Indiana. Now, I also want to please warn everybody that with absentee balloting and increases in voter registration, that could have an impact to change some things. But for the most part, that 53-47 Republican is what I think it'll probably be.
So how much do you think Rokita is going to be hurt by removing potential moderators of debates in the past and probably in the future?
Oh, well, we'll just have to see, my friend. We'll just have to see.
Hopefully he learned something from that. If I were to see him today, I would tell him that. And I know him reasonably well since I've known him since his days working with Sue Ann Gilroy. It's just kind of interesting. And along the way, he did a couple things that were helpful to broadcast stations I worked for. So I am aware of some of the things that you have pointed out, Abdul, not the least of which was the moderator situation. And that is just dead wrong. You just don't do stuff like that, no matter how you feel situation. But anyway, it is interesting to follow. And, I know Weinzapfel a little bit too, from his days running for other offices, 20, 25 years ago. And, seemed like a really thorough individual and knew his way around the block. I seem to think he's more of a moderate, but I don't think people really realize that.
Yeah, and he just put out a commercial that's going to start running relatively soon. Basically talking about 2007 when they had the big tornado go through Evansville. They all kind of worked together to get the problem solved, and he'll protect individuals' health care and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that race breaks down. I still think, though, that simply because Indiana is such a red state, I won't say deep red because Democrats can win statewide. I put the odds toward Rokita, but it wouldn't surprise me if Weinzapfel wins.
So, other questions for Abdul while he's here? Ross, I noticed you unmuted yourself. Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Abdul, thanks for your radio show and your other outlets. Appreciate that. A couple quick questions. Well, maybe not quick to answer. How long, nationally, locally, how long do you think it'll be before we get the results of the election? And the second question is, with this year being a budget year for the General Assembly, and that's going to be a challenge in its own regard, what else do you think they can get accomplished this year?
Okay, on the first one, I think we'll have the election results all done within a week or so. I really do, because some places actually start counting as soon as they get the ballots. Other places start counting like election day. For example, like in Marion County, after the polls close at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I think it is, they immediately start counting ballots. So I don't think we'll have like this month-long discrepancy as to who's in charge. Now, I will say this, though, if you are going to vote early, and you're going to vote absentee, make sure your signature matches your other signature. Make sure you do everything that you're supposed to do. And actually, what's interesting is in Florida, Michael Bloomberg is spending like $15 million to help convicted felons or people who have served their time pay their fines and penalties. because Florida just amended their constitution to allow felons to vote. But there was a question in the law about if somebody had paid a fine or finished probation, were they still under sentencing or could they vote? So now that's going to be interesting. They're going to probably benefit about 35,000 people in that ball of wax. And so Florida is going to be, like I said, one of those real battleground states to watch. But as far as election results go, like I said, I can see them all within a week or so, to be honest with you. As far as the General Assembly goes, I think obviously they're going to be doing the budget. Also, it'll be interesting to see what lawmakers introduce legislation to scale back the governor's emergency authority, because that to me is going to be interesting to watch, because originally this all happened back in 2000, 2001 after 9/11, and then lawmakers gave the governor even more authority in 2008, 2009 when we had the big market crash. And so after almost 20 years of letting the governor do whatever he wants, now everybody finds Jesus and says, oh, no, we need to take some of his authority away. Like, well, he's had this authority for 20 years, and you could have did something when we didn't have a problem, but that's just me thinking out loud.
Thank you.
So, Abdul, obviously, Jim Lucas has come out and endorsed somebody other than Governor Holcomb. There's been some other elected officials, local elected officials that are Republicans that have endorsed other people besides Eric Holcomb. What do you read into that?
They got an issue with Eric, to be honest with you. Jennifer McCormick doesn't surprise me at all, because Jennifer McCormick is basically a Democrat. And for those of you who read my cheat sheet, I wrote in the last one basically saying, okay, I don't see a story here. Democrat endorsing Democrats, because Jennifer McCormick has voted in Democratic primaries, and she also voted in the most recent primary, back in June. So as far as I'm concerned, she's not really a Republican. As far as Jim Lucas goes, Jim Lucas is Jim Lucas. And so Jim is going to do what Jim is going to do. Now, Jim's a good friend. I love him to death, but Jim can be a bit challenging from time to time. Now, at the end of the day, I don't think endorsements really matter all that much. I mean, they'll get you a headline or two, but that's about it. This got them a little bit more of a headline simply because they endorsed somebody of the other party. But I don't think it'll make that much a difference at the end of the day. I mean, maybe some in his district, but if you don't know who Jim Lucas is, you're like, okay, why should I care about what a guy from Seymour thinks?
Jim Lucas might actually be a good chamber chat guest, only for the entertainment value.
Oh, he'd be a hell of a chamber. He'd be a hell of a chamber chat. I'd tune into that one, my friend.
Hey, Abdul, can you dig up the perennial talk show caller Larry somewhere? He'd be interesting too, just for comedic value.
I will say, Crazy Larry has never been on a chamber chat, but he is barred from being an attendee on chamber chat. So
Mark Moon. I mean, I even got warned the time I filled in for you, Abdul, that he would probably call. He did, and we were ready for him. We nailed it pretty good. Hey, I wanted to change gears, so I wanted to ask if I am correct about that. There was still one remaining court challenge to the no excuse absentee voting. Did that get resolved, or has there been a decision on that? Or do you know?
I don't think there's been a
about
decision.
The 19th.
I think there was a decision on extending voting hours and whether counties could do it or not. But otherwise, as far as the last challenge left, I think that's still out there.
Yeah. Okay. That's just interesting. Let's just assume that nothing changes there. What is the likelihood? And one of the arguments has been that the legislature has to change that, despite the fact that Holcomb did it for the primary. Supposedly the legislature has to change that situation. What is the likelihood that they would go ahead and do that in the next session?
I think there's a chance they may do it. Like I said, you got 11 reasons to vote absentee. And actually, and also please remember too, we don't have election day in Indiana. We have like election month, because early voting actually starts on October 6th. So yeah, you've got 30 days to get your ballot in. And also,
I got my absentee ballot a week ago.
Yeah, and so technically, you can mail your absentee ballot in now. And
yep, I'm going to.
Yeah, you'll be fine. So this whole thing about the elderly and the sick, got to choose between your health and voting. It's like, well, yeah, but not really, because you got 30 days and change to get in, go vote. You can vote at your county office. You can vote in satellite voting is now a big thing. You got 11 reasons that you could vote. And by the way, all it says on one of those things that you can reasonably expect to be away from your polling place on election day. Well, okay, here it is, September 23rd. Yeah, I won't be around on November 2nd. I'm probably going to be gone. So I fill out my absentee ballot and then it turns out I'm here. Oops, my bad. But I just forgot. So.
Yeah, and the darn thing is, you and I both well know that that's the practical way to deal with it if you need to or you want to. But there's some people that if that's not exactly the way it's written, they'll never do it. Yeah. Hey, there's practicality and there's reality sometimes.
Now, Abdul, I want to ask you, half of Lawrence is in the 5th Congressional District. John Ruckelshaus, his Senate district bleeds into Lawrence Township some. What do you see happening in those races? Obviously, there's a couple legislative seats in suburban Indianapolis that might be up for grabs. Do you see any of those turning over?
I think Ruckelshaus is going to be interesting to watch because he and Fatty, the city former comptroller, who's now running against him, are starting to get a little ugly because there was things about Fatty when he was homeless, and then about taking money from schools and free through K kindergarten, the whole 9 yards. So that one's going to go back and forth for a while, and that would maybe be the outlier in this race. I do think with the 5th Congressional District, that could also be a late night one because you got Marion County, which is primarily Democratic. You got that Zionsville, Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville is kind of split a little 50-50. And then you got the northern part of the district, which is a lot more Republican. So I think it can go either way. I still think Republicans have an edge in that district until redistricting. And then I would not be surprised if all of Marion County is the 7th Congressional District, and that's it. And then the 5th is just everything sort of north of 96th Street. I can easily see that happening on the next go-around.
So, yeah, it's interesting. The congressional district has to stay within Marion County just because the population is large enough to support one. But, yeah, I've seen it drawn as a horseshoe and lots of other shapes. This is about as contiguous as it's gotten. But, yeah, that's going to change a year from now anyhow.
Yeah.
Although I'm also hearing rumor that there might be a special session next year just because the census results might be delayed and they might not be in before the legislature adjourns. You heard anything about that?
I'm hearing that also. I'm also hearing that they may actually have session across the street, either at the convention center or in the government center because of social distancing and some other things as well. I want to say the census data is supposed to be in by the end of the month. So it may be, as long as it's in by January, they should be fine because I can assure you they're already drawing the maps right now and just kind of playing with them and tinkering on the edges, like, because you can kind of estimate how much Indiana has grown, over the past 10 years. And then you kind of have your sort of set maps ready to go because actually it was, believe it or not, Justin Moed who drew the maps for the House Democrats back in 2010. So, because he was just a staffer then at the time, and he literally drew the maps. So, which means he already had the maps done beforehand. But yeah, I see the maps so technically already being done. They just tinker with around the edges, then just pass them and be done with it.
Nice. Any last questions for Abdul while we still have him? Seeing none, Abdul, if you could tell everybody where they can read you, listen to you, see you, and any other things you want to plug.
Everywhere.
All right, no problem. Well, first of all, thank you, Brad Kloppenstein. I always like doing Chamber Chat, particularly when I'm not in Las Vegas at the time. Yeah, you can follow me at indypolitics.org. Also, WIBC Radio. I do a show on Saturdays from 1 until 3. And also, just Google my name, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, and you'll find me on either Fox 59 or Wish TV or some television station somewhere else. And like I said, it's always my pleasure hang out with my friends in Lawrence.
Well, Abdul, thank you very much. For those of you watching, keep in mind tonight we've got our Greater Lawrence Chamber cruise in. The weather's going to be fabulous for tonight. I know Porter Books and Bread will have their cart out with sandwiches and drinks. So be sure to come out. We are winding that down. As long as the weather holds, we're going to continue to do it. But my guess is we probably only have about 4 more weeks before it gets too cold, too dark, too whatever. So if you've ever thought about coming out, tonight's a great night to do it. Get your reservations in. Next Thursday is a Greater Lawrence Chamber membership meeting. It's a luncheon. It's going to be at the Garrison over at the golf course here at the fort. Governor Holcomb is going to be our speaker, so make sure that you get your reservations in for that. Seating is very limited due to COVID, so we are getting close to being sold out, but we'd love to take your reservation today. And otherwise, that's it. Next week, our guest is going to be Lawrence Common Councilor Sean Denny. He's going to be here talking about Lawrence, parks, and anything else that's on his mind. So be looking for that event page to show up here soon. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.